efficiency sides. And the first presentation we are going to have today is step-by-step guidelines or manual of implementation of any construction site or facility. I think you all know our technical guidelines on project implementation. I would like to draw your attention to it once again. This publication is available at the project support team website. For us, this is a sort of a Bible that regulates the whole process of project implementation if we take technical aspects. Uh, there you'll have the approximate uh, schedules to be approved or to be agreed with the support team. For example, if you think that we as support team uh, take too long to approve project documentation, please you can write to us and make a reference to our own publication to these guidelines in case you think we do not meet the deadlines and the schedules. Once again, I would like to mention that this guideline, this manual publication, is a practical manual for all the stages of project technical implementation. And by following this manual, you will make your life easier during this process. You see the key stages. I actually have omitted the energy audit, the application process, because I think at this stage, which is not topical, you have practically completed these stages. Probably some of you are just completing your energy audits. The majority of the projects that are here right now are on the stage of design specification and estimates development, and some of you even have approved these documents with us, and some of you even go to the national expertise according to the state construction norms and standards. Some projects have already started preparing procurement documents and tender procedure documents, and soon are going to publish their tenders on construction works, on procurements of goods and services. Then we follow the logical chain, goes the contract signing with the contractor, talking about methodological support from us, from the support team. We have developed on the basis of the project first stage, we have developed the general recommendations that should be included into the contract with the construction company. Later there will be a specific presentation on it. Actually, it includes the requirements which, as a rule, are not mentioned in the contract. For example, the commitment of the construction company or the contractor to participate in weekly meetings. For example, this is the commitment of the contractor to prepare weekly reports on progress of the works. These issues are not usually included into the contracts, and the contractors are not used to it, but for us this is an obligatory element of participation in the project. What we are going to discuss today the most is the very process of construction works and organization of site supervision, both according to the national norms and additional quality control on the part of project teams, on the part of support team, and that means that we or our experts are going to visit the sites during the process of construction works. We are going to prepare our own reports for you. So we are going to detect, in case we see them, any defects or deficiency, and we are going to fix it. And with the help of our report, you will be obliged somehow to address the construction company to remove all deficiencies and defects. And also, such reports will be prepared for the representative offices of the European Union in your countries, because they are the contracting body, they are also part of the contract party, and they really would like to see that the European taxpayers' funds are spent in a proper way, and the sites that are funded by the European Union meet the quality requirements and standards. Another point we are going to discuss today is the final acceptance of works on the part of you as the client. So we are going to discuss what you should do when, for example, the construction company states that everything is completed. So how you can finalize this process, how you document that process, etc. And then there is the technical maintenance process and measurement and verification stage. During preparing your energy audits, you have prepared some information on energy consumption of the sites before some renovation measures were applied. So there are two types of indicators. The first one is the baseline, how much energy your sites should consume according to normal conditions in the building, or for example according to street lighting norms. And the second indicator for us is the average energy consumption at these sites for the recent 3 years. By fixing these figures or these values right now, we also will have to record the same figures after the measures were implemented, because one of the key indicators of the success of your project is the savings you have obtained in megawatt, in the energy from renewable sources of energy, and CO2 emission reduction. So these are the key indicators that are part of the Covenant of Mayors and part of Demo Project's philosophy. We shall talk about each of the stages separately, and the first stage in this particular presentation is design specifications and estimates development, or bill of quantities. Probably we shall not talk about it in details. This stage is almost over with many of you. What I would like to stress is the point that, for example, certain events that were planned in your application cannot be implemented for the reason of the low budget or underestimated budget. We see in some of the projects that certain ambitious goals that were set at the stage of application for the European Commission unfortunately cannot be implemented. Therefore, the project teams, together with their municipalities, should think and should find the way out of this situation. Actually, there are two ways out of the situation. For example, to find additional funding. One of the projects we have in Dubna, and for example, the project cost increased a couple of thousand of euros, but now the city declared its readiness to have additional funding for the project and to implement all those goals and objectives planned beforehand. We have an example from Sumy, when the project that was that at the stage of application, the cost of the project was 2 or 3 times lower. And now the city faces the challenge either to reduce the number of sites or the number of measures in each site. So the application should be amended right now, and it means a number of sample a number of steps on the part of steering committee. Neither mayor of the city nor the manager of the project cannot state that, for example, I'm not going to do this site or this particular measure. It should be the decision of the steering committee because it is performing this strategic role for regarding project management. So this decision should be based on a number of objective criteria. For example, economic benefit. For example, you could leave those measures that give the best effect in terms of CO2 emission reduction or energy consumption reduction, etc. And after these measures are approved by the steering committee, it is also probable that you need to change the project, and you have to inform the representative office of the European Union in your country and to organize consultation what should be done next. For example, probably you will inform only about some modifications regarding the project, or these modifications probably are too significant and probably should be formalized in additional appendixes as part of the contract. So after you develop the draft design specification and estimates and you submit it for expertise, please calculate your budget once again, whether you have enough funds to implement all the measures at all the sites, or probably some changes should be introduced. One of the variants that was chosen by our project is stage-by-stage implementation. For example, out of 3 sites included into application, for the first year they have taken 2 sites, and on the basis of calculations and estimates and evaluations of budgets for this or that site, it is possible to plan further implementation of the project. Will you have enough funds for all the sites, or you have to introduce some changes, for example, for the 3rd site included into the project? So this is one of the way out in case you really do not have enough funds. The specificity of our projects and our requirements is that at the stage of design specifications and estimates, we want to have updated financial analysis. So that means calculation of all the measures planned at the application stage and the updated cost on the basis of evaluated estimates. And the final point, and another point, is recalculation of potential saving. For example, at the stage of energy audit, you planned, for example, 10 measures that would result in this or that reduction of energy consumption, etc. But after the project was corrected, not all the measures are implemented or will be implemented. Therefore, we have to understand the potential effect from the measures and potential outcomes of the project. If the concept of the project is changed, it means you should also calculate again the potential savings that would come from the project. So this is the key reporting points. This is something that you are going to get after design specifications and estimates. And after that, you will have recommendation of the support team that will be presented in the form of the report on design specifications and estimates evaluation. And later you will have the general report. This is the document that will be signed by the responsible person in the municipality, and there will be a special document that will include all the sites and all the measures to be implemented, all the potential savings that you plan to have from the project, and this document will serve as a support document that the project team knows how to implement the project and what to expect from the project. Another stage is expertise and approval. This is the mandatory stage for the majority of Eastern European countries. It seems to me in Georgia they do not have this stage, it means this project should not undergo this special expertise. What I would like to mention here is the case when, according to recommendations or according to the remarks after the expertise, you need to significantly modify the project. And very often the teams ask a question whether the support team is going to verify the project once again. Probably not, because all our recommendations still are of recommendation character, and in case the expertise or an authority or a specific body states that this or that thing should not be done or should be done in this or that way, we cannot change it, we cannot do anything about it, and it means you have to take into account recommendations of the expert body and to take these remarks into account. The next stage is procurement. And here I would like to draw your attention to the procedures. In the majority of cases, we recommend to follow national rules of public procurements. They are strict and tough enough in the majority of countries. In case you cannot do it or you do not want to use the national procurement rules or standards, you always have a chance to use the European rules, PREG, and as the projects are funded by the European Union and as all the templates and samples are available at the website of the European Commission, still it is quite difficult to work with these documents because they are only available in the English language and in the other languages of the European Union, and therefore sometimes the language barrier may become a serious barrier for the teams, because in any case tender documents should be prepared either in English and the national language, but definitely you should prepare them in your national language. A bit later, we we were thinking whether we are going to have a specific training on procurements, but we decided that we shall not do it, and on behalf of support team, we shall just hire specific procurement experts, and in case you are going to use PRAC standards, there will be key experts from the team. If you are going to follow national rules, there will be national experts that are going to support you with preparation of tender portfolio and tender documents. It worked quite well uh, for all our projects during the first stage, and I don't think we should change something here. We were also thinking about additional webinar, but it means that there should be a series of webinar regarding peculiarities of national legislation, and if we do these webinars, we're going to do it, for example, for Ukraine and for Prague standards. But so far, the majority of projects are a bit far from this stage. Then we go about key reporting for this stage, I mean tender documents and the protocol of the procurements done. Also, our support team have developed the documents templates. For example, for Ukrainian projects, we shall have templates regarding the national procurement system. So we have special templates that have already been tested, and they are really good templates regarding procurement documents. If you use PRAC documents, then all the templates are available at the website of the European Commission. For some other projects, for Armenia, Moldova, Belarus, and Georgia, probably we shall have an individual approach and provide methodological support from the support team according to your requests. The next stage is contract signing with the tender winner. What we are going to stress here is that at the and the construction company will do only those things which are included into the contract. So you can require from your contractor only those things which are mentioned in the contract. Therefore, preparation or drafting of the contract, which in the majority of cases is part of the tender portfolio or dossier, so means a lot when you build your relationship, relationship between you and contractor. So if you do not include into the contract the duty of the contractor to submit weekly reports, then definitely you cannot expect those reports from him because it is not mentioned in the contract. So mind this stage is really important and requires lots of work on your part, and in some projects we have even specific experts regarding le legal or legislative issues, and here hiring such experts and procurement experts is important in order to ensure high quality contracts with your contractor. Another stage which is very important for the success of your project in future is the uh, stage of construction works. A bit later we are going to have detailed presentation on this issue. What I would like to stress here is weekly meetings with all the stakeholders at the site. At least once a week, the manager of the project, site supervisor, representative of the contractor, and in case it is necessary, representative of the design company should be present at the site, should follow the progress of construction works, should discuss different things, because the experience of the first stage shows that official correspondence of either via direct mail or email is not efficient enough in comparison with the meetings at the very site, construction site, when you can see some deficiencies and defects, when you can touch them and quickly find solution to some problems which are inevitable during construction stages. Also, I would like to draw your attention to weekly reports that should be provided by the construction company and by the technical supervisor. We require it from you, and you should require it from construction company and from the technical supervisors. It's a good way to work for you, because the technical manager having this report is able to follow the progress of construction works, is able to spot some problems at the construction site, and is able to follow whether certain defects and deficiencies found during previous meetings were removed or were corrected. And there is the next stage, which is the final acceptance of works. There is also methodological support for this stage. You can find all these steps in our manual, and today or tomorrow we are going to have a specific presentation on final acceptance. Final acceptance of works is your last chance for project teams, for as clients, to make the contractor remove or correct defects and deficiencies which are still present. After final acceptance of works, your contract with the contractor is over, and definitely there are contract relationships from the viewpoint of guarantees, but legally it is more difficult to demand something from the contractor in comparison with the situation when the contract is not over and you have not made your final payment to the contractor. And definitely the project is not over after completion of construction works. It is just the beginning. We're going to mention this point later. But the maintenance of the project is also important. You should think who is going to use the site. You should prepare the documents for technical maintenance, and this is also a stage without which even ideally modernized site will not give you any savings in terms of CO2 emissions or energy saving emission, because the quality of project of site maintenance really influences the quality of energy consumption reduction, CO2 emission reduction, and logically uh, savings of funds. And the stage of measurement and verification. Unfortunately, during the first stage, it was a problematic stage because very often the project were over immediately after the construction works, and there was no time to analyze the site performance after the project. So we did it after the projects were over. The project teams prepared a number of reports. They had also some problems while preparing these final reports because they didn't have the facts that could be included into the reports. Uh, and they definitely could not provide full reports to the European Commission. Therefore, the projects of the second stage are a bit shorter, but they are implemented in a more intensive manner than the projects in the stage, first phase. And I think you will have at least 3 months in order to prepare measurement and verification plans and to do monitoring of energy performance at the sites. And as a result, you will be able to have the final values regarding those effects you have obtained after the project was implemented. That is everything about project cycle. In case you have any questions.
So you mentioned that technical support in tender organization could be expected from you. So when could we expect it to happen? Because, for example, all of our documents are ready, and we can already start procurement if the documents are really ready. Well, as far as I understand, you have finished designing, your project is ready. So our support could be provided even now. I mean, if you intend to do the procurement according to Prague, it's also both easier and more complicated for you. Why easier? Because all the templates are available on the site of European Commission, and you don't need to invent something. You just need to change the parts which could be changed, and you need to use all the templates available there. You don't need to invent anything. But the problem is about what type of tender it is. If it is a national open tender, most probably you will need to translate all the templates into Romanian. Well, is it a problem? I think it is. Because besides the basic presentations which are available in Prague, we also have 70 general conditions pages. And, well, you have chosen this path, but you need to follow it. Within the first project, which was implemented in two towns, there was Soroka and Ognica. No, it was Ognica and Kantemir. Well, they had already the templates because they also made procurements under the Prague. So I think that you can write a question to Jan, your expert, and he will send out the templates which were prepared during the first phase project to you. But we, as a support team, will still not make procurement instead of you legally, because no representative of the support team is a member of the tender committee, and we are not entitled to in any way influence the results. But anyway, we are ready to reconsider and verify the documents which you have prepared using certain templates. That is what our role is, an advisory role. And in fact, most of the work still needs to be done by you as the team. You just need to take the templates and to have a look at the templates of the first phase project, to have a look at what documents need to additionally be translated and which documents need to additionally be prepared. Well, it's not a major problem for us, but the problem is connected with the official procedure of registration at the platform of the EU. And how do we upload documents and so on? Well, from the first phase experience, I may tell you that our projects publish these tender files not on the site of the European Commission and not on this specialized platform, but they did it on open platforms available, I think, in all the countries, in Georgia, Ukraine, Belarus. So that is not the European Commission platform. There, they publish their tenders, which are announced by the delegation or by the commission. But you need to do this in open documents, like document resources, like Moldova Trade. Or, I don't know exactly. Each country has some specialized platforms, the goal of which is to publish all open tenders, which are developed by local authorities, by the government, so you don't need to get registered within the system of the EU and publish your documents there. Well, thank you. If I could have one more question. Well, thank you very much for the presentation, but the point is that at every, or concerning every stage of this presentation, we do have quite a number of questions. As far as I understand, you will still decipher all this, and we could then talk about details, because at every stage we have had challenges. Yes, sure, but if you have questions now, then you may ask them now. But we will have a special presentation on the procedure of choosing site supervision, on the roles and responsibilities of design supervision, and coordination of core contractors' activity, some practical cases, some related to real situations which may occur locally. About the specificity of refurbishment project, street lighting project implementation. You have touched upon the issues where they had problems, like in Suma, that the real cost of the project was a little bit higher than intended. And we have also faced partially the same problem, but that was connected to the fact that there were changes in the technical approaches and the requirements as to how it needs to be done. And maybe I will share my experience and say that it would be good if before we developed project proposals, we already had the minimum requirements, the minimum criteria for quality, and the minimum technical requirements for equipment, because we really faced this problem. We took into account our climate zone, and we intended to have insulation with certain materials of certain thickness. But after we already won the tender, it appeared that we needed to increase the thickness 1.5 times, which incurred a number of changes in the financial costs. Also, probably we could discuss with our colleagues the issues of energy audit. Who else has not come to this project? Well, maybe some of them are not yet at this project, but I would advise you to carefully check the results of energy audits, because I may tell you about our country that about 95% of the results of energy audits in our country do not correspond to reality. And quite often auditors apply artificial methods, and they try to show what would be expected, and that's what you get. Therefore, after that, when you go over to the measurement and verification stage, if you have stressed it, by the way, that it's necessary to do recalculation and probably to introduce some changes into the indicators into that at that stage. Then there is an issue with indicators. Unfortunately, I don't know about the situation in other countries, but in Moldova, it's already a fact. And we have made conclusions on the basis of more than 5 years of work of the Energy Efficiency Fund in Moldova. that as a result of thermal insulation or thermal refurbishment of buildings and internal heating systems, energy consumption and the costs of heating increase. That's a fact. And this fact is connected to a lot of objective reasons, but one of the most frequent ones is that we have underheating. And therefore, we cannot further talk about some positive effects of the implementation of the project. That's very difficult. And the same refers, by the way, to the project which implemented dealing with lighting, when the savings as a result of the implementation of the street lighting refurbishment was a little bit different than the one expected. And there is a simple explanation to that. If in the city or in the town we have about 100 lamps, but de facto only 20% of them work, we replace them, and then all the 100 lamps work. So definitely energy consumption will be on the verge, like plus minus, and in our case we reach savings, but in some cases there may be no saving at all. So we need also to convey this message to our colleagues, because as far as I understand, some of you are already at the stage of implementation, but the others are not, and you need to understand what you will be faced with. We have a comprehensive project within which we have the construction of a biomass boiler house. This will be a local boiler house for a number of buildings. Also, this is heat insulation of 2 schools and 2 kindergartens. That is also installation of photovoltaic panels on the roof to compensate for a part of the cost of energy, of electricity. This is also installation of solar collectors to provide hot water supply for 2 kindergartens. So it's kind of a comprehensive project, you can see it. And also optimization of the heating system and installation of individual heating units is also included there. So I think that we will touch upon all of those issues throughout the day. Well, with your permission, I will comment upon 2 of your statements. The first statement is related to the requirements. I think that this has been a comment from our experts, that requirements to heat resistance, factor, and thickness of materials, the criteria, all those requirements. We saw some problems in the first phase of the project, like we wanted to insulate a kindergarten with the material 5 centimeters thick, and we wanted to introduce it into the guidelines for project writing, the minimum requirements to the factors, to materials. Unfortunately, that was not supported by the Brussels. They did not support the support team, and these indicators or requirements or key recommendations were not included. But the Brussels said that, well, later this could be introduced at the stage of implementation. I mean, we could require some additional technical criteria which correspond to the best European practices. So the norms available in COMDEP will be covered tomorrow, and these norms are not the strictest and the most rigid from the point of view of the European practices. They are rather rational and well-grounded for all climate areas. And here is another factor, that the program Cabinet of Mayors demonstration projects, and I'm focusing here on demonstration projects, does not deal with repairs of kindergartens and schools. It deals with the projects which would be implemented to serve as benchmarks for further projects to be implemented in your countries. That's why the indicators or the requirements which we have developed, no matter whether you like it or not, will be supported by us all the time, and we will really monitor compliance with those requirements, because we need to comply with them and this will then give a positive result from the point of view of the future operation of the buildings. And by the way, when we're talking about financial effect on the cost of the project, increase of the thickness of insulator is not a critical increase in the costs. And therefore, you had problems not due to this, but due to some other reasons, like additional costs of the repairs of buildings. And concerning another statement, the actual saving and the estimated saving. You know, we have an ongoing internal discussion in our support team because Jan typically supports only real, actual results, while Norbert supports the idea of estimated basic criterion because if we compare a building where before refurbishment there was no ventilation or which was underheated or which didn't work in the winter time, and if you compare this building with a refurbished building which has additional energy spent on the ventilation system and where we probably have it working for a different number of days, well, it's a little bit wrong. So we were trying to find a compromise there, and we are using two types of indicators. The first are estimated, like the base indicators, which are normally calculated by the auditor from the point of view of how much the building would consume if it functions in a proper way. But also we have the records of the actual consumption of energy before the implementation of the project, and we are ready that on the basis of the results of implementation of the project, in some buildings or in some facilities will consume more energy than before. But we would want to make this information more public, and we would focus and draw attention to this of the cities and of the project teams to the fact that please be ready to the fact that after the completion of the project, you will probably spend even more assets on certain facilities of the system or some parts of the systems. And this is acceptable for most of the buildings. It's partially acceptable for the street lighting system, depending on what the condition of the systems was before the implementation of the project. But as far as heating projects are concerned, so their actual savings are better expressed, and they mostly lead to the direct reduction of the cost of resources when you switch to alternative resources of energy. And yes, that is a problem, and therefore we would like to use two types of indicators. And further on, when we try to disseminate the lessons learned and the experience of the demonstration projects, we would be willing to tell the cities and towns that, come on, if your street lighting system is in a bad condition, you will get plus 50% of savings. For example, the project in Mena got this effect. The estimated saving was 66% from the baseline, but de facto we got plus 50 of the consumption of energy and therefore the money for its payment. And we spent the whole budget for lighting within 2 months. There is one more point. That's why I'm saying that there are a lot of issues arising on the spot. These are the issues related to design and estimate documents. You have mentioned that the change in the thickness of insulator does not bring to any critical changes in the overall cost of the project, but I would say that it does. And when we are compiling design and estimate documents, we need to realize why we generally need those documents. In some countries, we still have these documents, and some we don't. For example, in our country, the procedure is mandatory when design and estimate documents need to be examined. And the expert needs to assess how correctly the prices of the chosen materials have been set and how correctly the materials have been chosen. And during this examination, the goal is to prevent overinvestment of money. At the same time, when we have demonstration projects and we're trying to explain to the examiners, to the expert that It's necessary sometimes to have this overinvestment. Um, but for example, our Institute of Energy has made the feasibility study of the necessary thickness of heat insulation for buildings with different types of external fencing. And in this way, state examination on the basis of research work of that institute from Moldova is trying to make pressure on us, but we are somehow we have already managed somehow to explain to them that we will this is a demonstration project and we will follow Prague and not local procurement procedures, and they are already trying to somehow make allowances for us, but I must tell you that the difference in the price after the design and estimate documents, which include all the taxes uh, which you can think of and which you cannot think of, the and when you include the actual price of the works, which is real, actual, you get more than 15%, which are indicated according to the procurement procedure. But 15% is not critical. Yes, but sometimes it's not even 15%, it's much more. It happens. Therefore, I would say that design and estimate documents or design and specification document, no matter what you call it, may sometimes give a boost in terms of rising costs. And therefore, I'm addressing my colleagues. You need to show that your project is tax-free and customs duty-free when you're developing design and estimate documentation, because then it already yields 30%. Well, you're telling it for your country, while, for example, in Ukraine, and here we have most representatives of from Ukraine, everything is absolutely different. The situation is absolutely different. Um, uh, you have touched upon the issue of money. That's why I've started having a say. Design and estimate documents are not developed according to certain are developed according to documents, and I know that the same documents are in Belarus because they are back from the Soviet period. You may get an investment from the EU, you may get the money from the budget, you may use any other source, but the rules of development of estimates of expenditure are the same, and it doesn't matter whether it's tax-free or not, VAT-free. Also in Ukraine, the support team and the methodological guidelines do not require any factors which are higher than the national ones. And the difference is very, very minor. I mean, in some nuances. Ukrainian factors for windows, for roofs, for resistance, for sickness mostly do correspond to what is recommended by the support team, and there is no specific difference. Maxim has mentioned the situation in Ukraine, and the difference here was that sometimes applications are written on the basis of the data taken from nowhere, just from internet. They get the information about about the cost of 1 square meter of insulator from the internet. But in Ukraine, we do have all the requirements, and if you do follow these requirements, so you will not have problems. And we are trying to cover this issue at our trainings, and I will tell during this presentation, my presentation. You need to differentiate between countries, national legislation differences, and some nuances. As far as audit is concerned, I'm going to tell you that a lot of Ukrainian projects also are faced with the problem that 95% of audits write very strange things. But it depends on the choice of the auditing company. We have about 80% of auditing firms which just have some certificate and zero competence. They just get down to work, and that is their first or second time, and some of our cities have also had this problem. And I, as a technical consultant, asked not to take into account the data of the audit at the designing stage, because this audit provides some information which is not real. But fortunately, the situation is changing. The quality of works is improving, and European projects, including COMDAC, the projects really provide an impetus to the development of local designing companies, which learn by those projects, which improve their competence. And the only disadvantage is that we have brain drain, because a lot of competent specialists just are leaving for abroad.